The Bauer Garden, Yorktown, Virginia. We had met in the Hampton Roads area and got married in the 80s. We loved the area and wanted to retire here on property with a water view. In 1995, we found a beautiful 2-acre property on Chisholm Creek. Other than some crepe myrtles and volunteer trees along the property edge, there were no other plants. Over the 25 years, we have slowly expanded our garden. While the emphasis has been on azaleas, especially creating legacy gardens, we have a large number of companion plants, the primary ones being hellebores, hydrangeas, and gardenias, along with magnolias and perennials. We constructed a new home and have lived here since 2012. We continue to expand our garden with legacy gardens of Klimovich, Stewart, McDonald, and Holly Springs varieties. Other collections we are expanding include Bowie Mill, Glendale, Encore, Harris, Schroeder, and Marshy Point. Finally, we are also expanding our collection of native azaleas and other deciduous varieties. This is the start of what later became our Serenity Garden. The azaleas in the distance are our Formosa azaleas. The photos and the ones immediately following were taken in 2004. We also planted our first southern magnolia during this period, along with a number of different azalea varieties. Unfortunately, this was during a period when we weren't keeping track of plant names or labels. This is the start of our lane garden. Over time, this garden was expanded to be double the size. Finally, this is an early picture of our Kwansan cherry tree with a couple of azaleas planted below it. Again, we didn't track the names of these azaleas, however they are a good size now and look beautiful under the cherry tree. As you enter the property, we have a series of orphan azaleas planted along the right-hand side. These are also referred to sometimes as lost label plants. On the left side, we have a much larger bed with a collection of azaleas which include Formosa, linearfolium, and Chromo-shikibu. Additional plants include Bradford pear, river birch, and gum trees, and hydrangeas, pieris, irises, and erycema. This is our Serenity Garden. The first plantings in this area were in the early 2000s. We were very fortunate in that we planted the Formosa along the property line at the edge of the creek. The two original plants are over 12 feet tall and extend over 20 feet wide. We expanded this area over time, creating a path into a small alcove with a bench looking out towards Chisholm Creek. As the concept of legacy gardens grew, we started plantings of Klimovich and Stewart azaleas to form the boundaries of this garden. Additionally, we added hydrangeas, hellebores, and fall varieties of azaleas, including Marshy Point varieties, Humdinger, and Autumn Glory, as well as August of Frost and its Beaudry Sport. By far, the most impressive portion of the garden is the Formosa, which forms a nice backdrop to other varieties such as King's Luminous Pink and Stewart's Phil Lauer, Francis Lauer, and Marie Susan Melkovitz, named after my mother-in-law. This is one side of the Serenity Garden. In this area we have a few Robin Hill varieties planted. portion of the garden contains the number of fall bloomers, including Marshy Point varieties Humdinger and Autumn Glory, as well as August of Frost and August of Frost Poetry Sport. While Humdinger is a fall bloomer, it was in full blossom this spring. This is a view across the Klimovich Legacy Garden towards the Kwansan cherry tree. The white azalea in the foreground is not a Klimovich variety. It is white spider. We have a large number of hellebores in our garden. They have become our favorite companion of plants for azaleas. This view is taken at the entry to the garden. The water in the background is Chisman Creek. It is brackish water and tidal and joins the Pocosin River right before it enters Chesapeake Bay. This is another view of Chisman Creek, photographed from the Klimovich Legacy Garden. This photo shows King's Luminous Pink, along with Formosa and George L. Tabor. The white azalea was supposed to be Secret Wish, however we were later told by the source of the plant that it probably wasn't. It's an attractive plant nonetheless. The bench provides a nice resting spot amidst the azaleas. This is another view of the Serenity Garden taken from the Holly Springs Legacy Garden. The large azalea to the right of the photo is RBS 03. A numbered Stewart variety recently named for Jim Brandt. Behind it is Brianna Murin, another Stewart variety. Next to the Serenity Garden, we have planted a Holly Springs Legacy Garden. This new garden contains hybrids developed by Pete Vines. This year we transplanted half of the original plantings into an expansion bed. Pete is a member of the Northern Virginia chapter and did his hybridizing in Springfield, Virginia, along with other chapter hybridizers, Bob Stewart and Joe Klimovich. Part of the Holly Springs Legacy Garden is in the foreground of this photo. The bed to the right contains Stewart hybrids. The plants in the foreground are Holly Springs. Here are a couple of Holly Springs varieties. The one on the left is Scarlet Princess. On the right is First Love. Two more Holly Springs varieties. On the left is Neptune, and on the right is Purple Magic. One of the borders of the Serenity Garden is the Stewart Legacy Garden, comprised of varieties developed by Bob Stewart. Bob was a member of the Northern Virginia chapter who lives in Springfield, Virginia, and has been hybridizing since the late 70s. A number of his varieties have been named for society members who have made contributions to the promotion of azaleas. We also won the naming rights to a variety in a chapter auction and named it after my mother-in-law. In the foreground is RBS 03, a Stewart variety which was recently named for Jim Brandt. This is a newly added Stewart variety named Robert Thau, after the late president of the Texas Forest Country chapter and an associate member of the Northern Virginia chapter. Here is another Stewart variety named after Phil Lauer. Robert Thau, the president of the Texas Forest Country chapter, was also the legacy lead for the Bowie Mill azaleas. Robert Thau passed away in October of 2020. Rick took over the legacy lead duties for the Bowie Mill azaleas and started to create a legacy garden in our garden. We recently purchased 14 additional varieties to add to the 3 varieties we already had to create the start of our Bowie Mill legacy garden. This is one of our newest garden beds and contains a McDonald legacy garden with hybrids developed by Dr. Sandra McDonald from Hampton, Virginia. As you can see, this garden still has rather immature plants. It also includes our largest rhododendron. When we built our house, we included a new circular driveway. Originally, the center was covered in grass. We started adding plants shortly after completion of the house, including knockout roses, encore azaleas, Confederate series azaleas, as well as a number of other bushes and perennials. Our goal is that the plantings will become so dense that we will no longer have to weed. Our bed contains 2 beautiful red knockout rose bushes. In the foreground, we have an area with Confederate series azaleas as well as various perennials. While we normally go for perennials, zinnias are an exception. On the left are Mexican petunias. They are full of purple flowers which die and drop off each evening and are replaced by new blossoms the next day. On the right is My Mary, a Beasley hybrid. Here is a shot of Mexican petunias, lilies, black-eyed Susans, and knockout roses. The front of the house is southern-facing and contains a variety of plants including gardenias, encore azaleas, viburnum, lantana, and sedum. We also have Yorktown onions, a variety brought over by the British, which now grow wild and are protected by law. On the left is a Princess Margaret Rose gladiola. On the right is a Yorktown onion with gardenia blooms in the background.